has a moody, very moody, edgy kind of
I know.
personality, but
She has Tony's smile,
yes.
and
We won't hold that against her.
she just get her a lot farther if she doesn't have Tony's smile.
All right, so we were talking the other day. Tell us, so you were in Dartmouth, and this guy comes up to you and say you want to do something for the military.
What are we doing?
We're just asking questions about.
Is this thing going?
It's on. Yeah.
It's on.
Huh?
Yeah, it's on.
It's on.
Okay.
So-
Well, I can tell you we've got a lot of experience with it.
Not a lot. I
Right.
just
This
we're
is what
doing
I
this on
do.
fly.
Yeah.
So what year is it? You're in Dartmouth.
Went 1939, graduated in 1942.
Right.
And actually it was class of 43, but because of the war they had a summer session, and the class of 43 was let go in I think early December 42. And by that time all of us had been interviewed by the OSS, and the representative of the OSS was a a Dartmouth fellow. He had graduated, I believe, in class of 38 or something, and was somehow in the OSS. I never found out how he got in, but he was recruited and was told to go out and fill up the communication sections, or at least part of it, and I believe he went to other colleges besides Dartmouth.
So what were some of the other colleges?
Sir?
What were some of the other colleges they
I have no,
recruited?
Yale? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yale and maybe Bowdoin.
Yeah.
Were they looking for a certain skill set?
Well, no, the
in-
skill was they were looking for people who were basically intelligent, and two, that had absolutely no affiliation with any basic political. The United States was not exactly pro-war at the time, so they knew they weren't going to get a lot of flag raisers. A number of the Dartmouth students, a small number I might add, went up to Canada, enlisted and served in the Canadian Army, and a percentage of those that went were skiers, because Dartmouth was known for its skiing skills, and they joined the ski units in Canada and were shipped over there. That would be my thing. You see, this OSS is absolutely the first intelligence unit, intelligence group that the United States has ever had. They've had spies within the country, people that just seek out information, but the OSS was absolutely a military agent in behind enemy lines, codes, ciphers, small groups, combat outfits, and whatever that the United States had ever had. So they were starting from scratch. And in starting from scratch, they had no other areas to recruit from except to recruit from colleges. And they recruited art directors. They created because their skill as artists and art dealers, because of their skill of being able to speak several languages, many of them. And some of them had a lot of experience as international travelers. There was a joke passed around about the OSS, calling it instead of the Office of Strategic Services, they called it the Oh-So-Social Group. But they did have a unique bunch of guys. They had a Count de Poulenc, who was an American citizen by that time. They had a kid who was a locksmith, but a super locksmith, could pick stuff. His father had to open Roosevelt's safe at one time because they just couldn't get into the safe. And so they all tried to bring some skill with them, and what a group of students brought with them was a basic intelligence, and they having still been involved sort of mentally in the study or in the academic or in something, they could absorb what they hope to be able to have for them to absorb. There are some of the units that were brought in from the Army and retrained for the specific. The OSS had a training ground at the Congressional Country Club outside of Washington. They took over a section of that.
What was the
How
training
many
like?
people were in it all together?
The OSS?
Initially, yeah, when they first started recruiting.
Oh, I have no idea. I really have no. I was surprised to discover that there were several. That there were probably there could well have been 10,000 people in the OSS when it was finally over. But that represented agents, that represented people in Washington, that represented the various groups from Chongqing. They had meetings in New Delhi, and they had them in the Middle East. They had them London, a group in Sub Rosa in Switzerland. So there were actually 12,000 ads, or 10,000 adds up pretty quickly.
Wow.
When you figure you have cooks and whatever.
Right.
Transportation. Then we went to Washington first as a civilian. As students, we were given the choice or told that we could complete our college career if we were in our last year or approaching our last year. But we signed what is known as they owned us. I can't remember the exact word. And the day we graduated, we were theoretically in the Army. It wasn't like waiting to be drafted. We were drafted, but they just hadn't quite called it yet. So we went as civilians into the OSS, and then were drafted from the OSS, sent to a reception center, given a uniform and a number, and 32, 86, 30, 96, and sent back to the OSS. I never had any basic training. They had a unit, as I say, in the Congressional Country Club, and they taught us firearms and to shoot a guy around, how to throw a hand grenade. But basically, they didn't spend a lot of time with it.
Well, what did they train you at?
Well, that was it. And then we went back and we worked in the ciphers and the groups. They trained us with their techniques, but not military combat, because they knew exactly what we were to be done.
So you were trained to break code.
Well, we were trained to be communications in the communication section of codes and ciphers for the Office of Strategic Service, and we could stay in Washington or be sent to the various forces around the world.
Did you get to choose that, or you just went where they told you to go?
Yeah, you pretty much went where they told you to go. If there was no problem, you said you'd like to go someplace, they'd say, okay.
How soon before they send you overseas?
Pardon me?
How soon before they send you overseas?
I don't know, maybe a month or less.
That quick?
Yeah.
And where did they take you? Where did they send you?
We landed in Casablanca, and by that time, the Germans had moved. We were not part of the invading group by any means. A small American Army military infantry contingent had joined the British and were moving the Germans back out of Tunisia and out of Libya into Tunisia, and the Germans were evacuating from Tunisia, and we were landing in Casablanca. And by the time we got there, they had gone, and we were now setting up our small operation.
And what did you do there? What was some of the most...
Well, they had the OSS, where they took over 2 villas. One villa they took over had a big fruit trees, ground area. We set up big tents there, parameter tents. And another place called Villa Magnolo was where all then the basic headquarters was, and was a site for. We also had a photo unit that could, not for just taking pictures, but for copying pictures, and whatever you do with photography. And the heads of OG operational groups and everything became in out of this villa, and the two villas were within probably a half a mile of each other. And there we were, and that was it. We were indoctrinated on the. We knew what the process was, how the codes were to be done. That we had to familiarize ourselves with the radio operators and their schedules, and with the groups that were already in at that time. They would have been in Sicily and Italy, and I'm not sure they've gotten to southern France yet, because the Germans, over a month, it's pretty hard to separate certain sections. But we just covered, our group there covered southern France, Corsica, Sardinia, Italy, Greece, and Sicily. And there was another setup in Cairo that handled Greece, most Greece, and up in Yugoslavia, Hungary, and Romania.
Of all the things you did, what was like the most interesting thing that you can remember in terms of something you broke, something you deciphered? Is there something that comes to mind?
To tell you the truth, I can remember practically nothing. It didn't come across as spectacular stories that should be read. A lot of the stuff was iterated and mixed with information that was applied from other places. So you knew what you were getting. You knew the movements of groups. You knew if an agent or a small group had arrived at their particular space. You knew it if they hadn't arrived, or if there was a success. You knew if they were. There was one for a the time. Romania did not join the war until the war was sort of underway, and so we did have a group in Romania, but they had to be evacuated. But you would pick up intelligence from them, and the people that received the intelligence, say the French desk or the Italian desk, meaning our group, or any other group interested in the areas that we had troops, would read into a message something that might mean absolutely nothing to us. It sounds strange to say that, unlike movies, you don't say, "Whoopee, we've landed." I mean, you just have no idea what some of the stuff means. You just know that it came in, it was read, the guy was safe, the mission was accomplished. But they weren't terribly chatty. They made their point, and if they knew what they were going in to do and how to succeed, a 2-word message could come back and say success, and that would have been the story. Upstairs, they knew 14 paragraphs of what had just taken place.
So your job was to communicate with the agents in the field? Mm-hmm. You communicated.
We personally didn't. There was radio operators, a big deal involved in this, and there was an area just outside of Algiers called Cap Manifold. At any rate, we set up took over a little villa out there. We were constantly taking over people's homes and set up and transmitting the stuff and receiving the messages from out there. Then a messenger, or what the hell they call them, would take our stuff out to be transmitted, pick up what they had received, and runs it back in here. And
what were some of the ways that people got messages across? I mean, you were talking yesterday about a book.
Radio.
Yeah, but you were talking about a book and remember a book that could be bought on a shelf anywhere.
Well, that was the key to the code. In other words, you would use you had to have you would take a line out of the Once Upon a Midnight Dreary. So that would be the line you were going to use. Underneath that, you would write your message, letter for letter, that corresponded to that, and then that would be transposed into another set. Those two letters represented another, and then you would take those and put those into another line of English. So it was called double transposition. I'm making it sound kind of mixed up. It was really basically simple. I'm not describing, but
no,
it was,
you are.
And then that was set out in 5-letter cipher groups. There had to be X number of words or groups, cipher groups in a message. If there were too few, it might be easy to be read. If there were too many, it just got too wordy and gave them too much to work with. So if you didn't have enough, you would put what they call nulls in. You could say your grandmother's feet smelled. You could do anything you want. Generally not that half-assed, but you put it in just so they weren't X's. Because they were interested. They were interested in what we had to say, not like it was world-shaking, but it also what you call command information. But it was day-to-day work information of troop movements, of strange things they may have seen, of something odd, or of a terrible fire, of an explosion in a certain area, or of just something that took place. And these agents knew what they were looking for and why.
So then they would transmit through that
They would send
format.
back whatever, if they were asked to do something, or they all had several times a day to make contact. Let's say there were 3 times during the day they could contact. If they missed the first time because they just could not, it wasn't easy, the houses were being searched, it was inconvenient for them for some reason. And then they got their second, whatever it was, and they tried to make that. If they didn't, there was nothing. Generally, you just would wait for the second. Even if you missed a day, you would wait for the. I mean, not we, but I meant the operation. The idea was just wait to see, because obviously either he was taken, and he's not going to get any message, or it was inconvenient for him to send a message to you. And I told you last night about the importance of the recognizing the agent's hand, his fist they called it, in his sending, the dot dash Morse code thing, that the radio operator who had been with him while he was training could recognize his fist, could recognize his thing as you and I would recognize somebody's handwriting. And so he would listen and work the guy. Or if somebody else thought it was wrong and it was somebody he hadn't worked, he would then listen. And the one story I mentioned was the fist, the agent just didn't seem the agent. And they thought, well, he had 2 choices. Either probably one choice. Either he's been taken over by a German who is now trying to replace him and sending and trying to get a feel of what he said in the information. And sometimes the information was so flabby that the people that were interpreting thought it was just kind of phony. But basically, they were listening. Our little group was listening for the fist, not the information. And so they were about to give up on him because they all decided after a couple of days anything they sent to him was innocuous. It didn't make any difference, but they wanted him to reply so they could hear what he had to say. So, let's say at the end of the second day, they decided, or the third day, that this is not our boy. And just about that time, they got another agent mentioned that Jean-Pierre, he saw Jean-Pierre in the so-and-so, and his hand is, an arm is in a sling. And that's all he said. I think he probably said I didn't approach him, but because they didn't want if they like to stay away from each other.
Right.
But so with that, then they went back and they gave him a second chance, and they realized he didn't want to say I was. I have hurt my hand, because that could be a German to cover his own thing. But here he was verified for by a fellow agent that he saw who would have no reason to.
So what would have happened if
Well,
that
the
agent had?
the guy, he's dead. He would be in terrible trouble, because he would now be a guy who was not good. See, the USS also then had to supply their agents with money, because they didn't have a job. They had to be sure they had ration cards for food, that they had a passport, or for whatever was necessary, papers that were legal, that would keep that if this man is stopped and he expected to be stopped and just interrogate or examine his papers by either the French that were working with them, or by the Germans. If suddenly he has none of this, he would be hand to mouth. He would just have to be hoped somebody would take care of him. But he was spared.
Wow. Did you keep in touch with any?
Huh?
Did you make any friends in the OSS? Did you keep in touch with anybody through the years?
No.
No.
No, I kept just in my own group. There were a couple of guys I go into Dartmouth with, and we just stayed in touch like you might, and not a hell of a lot. They weren't my favorite Dartmouth buddies. The guys I liked a lot. There was one whose father was an actor, and he was a Navy man and sailor, but he was the head of the photographic unit. And we used to go to town and do stuff. These other two Dartmouth guys were bores. And I didn't stay in touch with him, and I could have. The strange thing, I was in about 1953. I got a letter from him in California, a big letter, and I stuck it in a book on my desk, because I was going to read it and do stuff. I never read the book, and about 8 years ago, I was moving it. I opened it, and here's the letter. And he was full of information about guys we knew, and he was in the police for a Los Angeles cop, and it distressed me to the point that I wept. But he's the only guy I stayed in touch with.
Did you try to find him after opening the letter?
I was ashamed to. I just didn't know what to do. By that time, he could be long dead. Jesus, I was 89 or 80-something years old. That's you could have stayed, and I'm sure some of them did. He apparently did, because he had news in that letter of several people that he knew about. And there was I palled around with a clerk in the and the sailor, and we would go down into Algiers, or we'd do things together. And the clerk was Hank Preveslin, a nice Jewish boy, blue eyes, red hair. And I got a kick out of him. And Preveslin, no, there was a Dartmouth guy that I liked, and he'd come with us. But the three of us had to go to Cairo, and we went to Cairo together, and it was sort of fun. We had a Catholic, a Protestant, and a Jew, and we had a great time. We went up into Israel. At that time, it was
well, what year was this?
Palestine. It was the mandate of the British.
Right. So what year was this? It was that
44.
44.
Wow.
And then, let's see, what else?
We did.
What?
Where were you when the war ended? You were still
When the
overseas?
war ended, I was in Italy.
Yeah.
I can tell you a little bit about some of the things the OSS did. You know, that there was we had a submarine, and the submarine was assigned to our group, that used to shuttle the agents into various places, the coast, and they'd roam ashore and turn them loose. And if you were on one of these submarine routines, you also had to be picked up and taken out. So they would give you, if you might be taken up into northern Italy, into Tuscany, to blow up a tunnel, train tunnel. And they would drop you, and they would tell you, you get back here in 2 days, and we will wait for, let's say, 20 minutes for you. If you're not here in 20, now I may make it too short, but they didn't wait long, 30 minutes. If you're not here, we'll leave you. And you're stuck, because they didn't want the submarine to be caught by a German plane or any other German boat covering the coast. So you're on your own. And one story like that, a group was up there, and I think there probably were, I'm guessing, but let's say 6 people in the group. And they were stuck in Tuscany, that's up in the upper northern west coast of the boot of Italy. And their job was now, we were now down in Italy, but below Rome, down in the Naples area, and Bari. And so these guys said, we'll walk home. And so they came down. They all spoke fluent Italian, which is interesting. So many of these groups were second-generation Italian kids. They would, a lot of them raised by their grandmother, and they could speak dialect. They just was something. And so the kids, they started to walk down, and they knew they didn't want to come down the west coast. That they thought was maybe not, because that was the Naples side. That was where the invasion was, on that side, and they thought they'd have a better chance if they crossed the boot and came down on the Adriatic side. And they got rid of their uniforms, and the only thing they kept were their shoes, because that was important. And they stole shows or negotiated, or they may have found sympathetic groups. And anyway, let's say the 6 of them started. Pretty soon they came across a pilot, a British pilot that had crashed. And he joined the group. And then they kept going. It got a little larger, the group. And they finally made their way across. And they got down to Bari, just outside of Bari. And I don't remember the size of it, but the size is certainly almost, if not double, nearly double of these guys. And when they got to Bari, Bari is a port, and the Germans had occupied. Their problem was, how the hell are they going to get through this very port set up? And the Germans were going to evacuate Bari, and they wanted and move towards, because they had no way. This group had no way of knowing what their war plans were. But they had to get through this evacuation. The Americans were on the other side. And suddenly they see coming down the road all these evacuees. The Germans were taking the village just outside of Bari and taking all the and pushing them into the American troops, so that just to clutter and tie up the roads and to slow them down so that they could give them time to get back. So they see all these guys coming, and they took bundles from ladies' heads. They carried babies. They took full carts. They did everything, and they crossed through the lines with Anyway, that's the submarine to the guys. And
Oh
they
my God.
There's a story right there.
That's a great story.
Now, this is like the submarine captain.
You
Or the
need to take a
cap-
break a little bit? You want some drink? You want to take a break? You want to take a break? Are you right?
What?
You want some water?
No, I'm fine. I assume that the submarine was a French submarine, that when France surrendered to the Germans, the French fleet was in Toulon, and the Vichy government told them all to retire rather, give up, surrender. Corps, fleet, everything to kill into the Germans. We've surrendered, and we're going to, if not cooperate, but we're just, the war's over. And the Free French, some did, they moved into North Africa. And some of the Navy units, particularly this particular one that I know, a submarine said he's not leaving his submarine in Toulon. And he told his crew, he said, if you want to get off, get off. If not, come with me. And so they crash dived and got out of, however they did, and then they dove, and then they took their submarine to North Africa. And I think several other did the same thing. But the fellow we got, the captain we got, was Captain Lerminier, and he was an elderly, but he certainly was no kid to be a captain. And I have to be captain, a working captain on one of these submarines, but he stuck with his submarine as long as he could. And gangrene and stuff set in because he was old, and he would get a wound or tired, and so they said, you can't do it. And then somebody else got him, but they had Captain Lerminier, and the OSS was going to send him back, planned to send him back to Philadelphia Naval Hospital to be taken care of. And let's see, but there was one catch. He had a wife, and so the question was what to do with the wife. So the OSS said, let's commission her. So they commissioned her in the Navy and made her his aide. And so she went back to the States.
It's a sweet story.
The stuff they could print and with their own little stuff they had. We had as the war progressed, some wax came into the unit as codes and ciphers. People, the war had now moved. There was the invasion had taken place. It was Italy. I don't mean it was safe, but these girls, it was safe for us because we were in what you knew was a fairly well protected. But they were skilled and great typists and stuff, and they were good. So one of the girls had hit it off with one of the OG, one of the operational group guys, and they dated, and he'd go out in his little thing, and but they were very, very fond of each other. And one day he didn't come back, and he was killed. And she's pregnant, but they aren't married. So the OSS printed up all the marriage papers, made her legal, sent her back to the States, and she had the baby, and she was his wife, and got all the benefits of the husband that was this way.
I like that story. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess you need to have friends in high places sometimes.
Well,
Or work for the
like I
OSS.
said, you weren't even high places. You had friends who had the skill. You could have a friend who, they
They could just...
yeah, well, a high place, but yes, that's true. They okayed it. but everybody was in the high place at that time.
Right.
It was a mixed up operation, as I mentioned before. Some were art dealers, some were so and so. It was trying to think of that.
Sounds like it was quite an extraordinary experience.
Huh?
Sounds like it was quite an extraordinary experience.
Well, yes, there are lots of yarns, but it was a funny thing. It's very hard to. You're looking back on it. You didn't cough them up or put them away like, boy, I can hardly wait to tell the guys. It just happened. They just took it for granted, and you would go, and had no idea what was happening in the other part of the world.
Did you ever meet any of the agents that you...
Had what?
Did you ever meet any agents after the war that
No.
you...
No.
You never knew how you really fit in all those little pieces fit together.
Yeah. Well, you kind of knew how. You got some idea of what part you played in, and when the newspapers start saying such and such happened, and so you say, well, you knew you had an agent in that area, and he saw it happening. And in Italy, we had groups of Italians that formed themselves that were generally these groups were communists, and basically they were fighting for communism on the American side to take whatever they could from the existing Italian government if it happened. And so you can follow occasionally with that. And there was a lot of money transferred. Money would be transferred to keep these guys going. We had an aeroplane assigned to the unit, a B-25 twin engine. I can't even remember what the nickname was, but the name of the plane was Maxwell House, good to the last drop. And I flew it in it a couple of times, and so I got to know the guys and I had. I lost 2 German prisoners, which was a shameful event. But I was going from Algiers from Tunis up to Bari, and I had these 2 Germans who had turned themselves in to be agents for the Americans. They weren't the enemy. They were anti. Hitler and all that sort of thing. They had their clearance, but I was to escort them from North Africa to Italy and to Bari. And we got to Tunisia, and I had the plane was there, and I had to go into town and send a message, and I asked the captain who owned the plane if he'd just please keep his eye on these 2 guys. And so when I came back, he had not kept his eye on these 2 guys. They were gone. Now the joke is, about a month later, I'm in Italy, and here coming down the aisles are these 2 Germans, and I had no idea how they got there. 2 Germans got from Tunis to Bari by themselves or something. Anyway. The wars are always neat and tidy. You never quite know about that.
No.
A story about when I say in Tunisia before which we had, we were not involved, but the OSS was, and that was the vice consul in Tunis was there when the Germans came through and took him prisoner. And his wife was there, and he lived, and they had a nice house in Tunis, and very much like the streets all faced. I mean, the houses all faced inside. There were walls and stuff, but inside the house would be around the mountains and the stuff, and that was beautiful. And so they took. And she was in a hospital with a broken leg or something, and she was not taken prisoner, and they couldn't tell her what happened to him. So she had no idea, and she was so annoyed. And they took her, and she was evacuated also. I'm a little vague about that. But they were concerned about what would happen. Was the place ravaged? Was it taken? And just everybody, just the silverware and everything just... What happened, the very loyal Arab servants dug a deep pit in the garden, buried all their stuff, so that when the war was over and they came back, the same loyal servants were there and setting the table. So Springs was his name. I can't remember his first name.
Those are great stories. You know those stories. You've seen them in movies, but then when you hear, they obviously come from actual events.
I mean, it's just the. I just can't think of it anymore.
Well, let's talk about it was fascinating. After the war, you talked about how After the war, you talked about how you worked at a trade show in Amsterdam. That's how you got in. You talked about how you wound up in TV.
Oh, after the war, I came back to the States, and because of my service, I went to Yale. Got my Master of Fine Arts in the Yale Drama School, and I had illustrated, and I was the director of the Yale Dramat, which is the undergraduate thing, and taught the English department for a couple of years, and then was offered a job in Stevens Institute in Hoboken as which had a theater research unit, and money was always important, so I took the job there for 2 years, and while I was there, I illustrated a book called Theaters and Auditoriums, written by Burrismeyer and Cole, and they were. It was really written for architects as to pitches and the types of acoustic material available and what had been discovered, and so a friend who was a stage manager of Radio City Music Hall saw one of the acts, the head of one of the acts looking in the book, and he says, "Oh, my friend illustrated that book." And he said, "Oh, he was a Dutchman." He says, "Oh, I'd love to meet him." His name was Van Leer, Oscar Van Leer, and he was a Jew, and he came to the States. He was a very wealthy Jew. He had factories called, they made steel drums or tins and things, whatever, anything that held material. And as a young man, he said, he was an old man, and at that time, said, I was sent to Paris from Amsterdam, and it was my first just to carry something, to deliver something. And he said, I came out of the Paris Underground and saw these hundreds of automobiles. He says, that's the future, but I can't build automobiles. I don't know. He says, but they've got to have fuel. I could make drums, steel drums. It didn't take a lot of money. You just roll the stuff and put it. So he went back and became incredibly wealthy, and had factories from Israel to practically all over the world. Anyway, so he said, would you come and work for me? And he got out of Europe because the Germans had a legalistic mind about it. They liked their signatures. Like if they took your factory, they'd like you to sign it saying it's all been okay and it's legal. And it's not that they're going to shoot you. It becomes a legal transaction. Now, they did that in a lot of stuff. And some people say it's one of the reasons they lost the war. They're so busy getting signatures. Anyway, they said, if you sign this thing, you can leave, let you go to the States. And he happened to also have high school horses that prance and do things and waltz and walk. And they said, you can take your horses with you, and you can take X number of friends. And I can't remember the number, probably somewhere around 11 or 12. Yeah, but that's the mentality you get. And that was early in the war. So the Germans got less generous as the war progressed. So he and his horses and his friends came to the United States out through Spain. And he was having his horses perform on Radio City Music Hall. And he said, would you come and work with us? So I went that summer, I went to work with him, and went back and worked into the part of the next year, and then it came to an end.
What did you do for him?
Well, they had industrial fairs because these guys had to start promoting their material again. The war was over, and they had no material, they had nothing. They'd been ground to our stands. And so they took me, and I'm sure a couple of other Americans that had suffered under the oppression. And so I came back to the country. And in the meantime, I had done summer stock for a couple of years before I went in the summer. And they invented television just in time. And I've gotten to television.
What was your first deal? What was your first job in television?
Pardon me?
What was your first job in television?
Training dogs.
Training dogs.
Our animals. It was called Your Pet Parade, a show on ABC. And ABC was a nothing. It had been part of the Red and the Blue Network, which was NBC and ABC were owned by NBC, owned by RCA. But the FCC says you got to break it off, and that was the creation of ABC. And I think the ABC became the Red, NBC was the Red Network, and ABC the Blue Network. So they were starting to build up, and then they had this show called Your Pet Parade for kids on Sunday afternoon. And you'd go out, and another guy and I would have pet shows. We'd get whipped together out in Long Island or New Jersey, and the kids would bring their pets and all that. No, this one sits up and can roll over, and this one can whistle Dixie. And so.
Oh, it's early stupid pet tricks.
Huh?
It's early David Letterman stupid pet tricks.
And so we did that, and that was the first job. And then I heard about unit managers at NBC, and everything was the beginning. I mean, we were the prototype of everything. If you had lunch, that was prototype. So I got a job at NBC as a unit manager.
What did the unit manager do?
Well, the unit manager was sort of the coordinator and the guy that knew all the elements that came together. And you saw that the crews were on time, that the rehearsals had their areas, and that the props were able, and you were keeping the budget. And it was a fun job. The whole thing was fun because, as I say, you were a prototype. You couldn't make a mistake. I mean, you were it. Whatever you did was the first time. Even your goof-off was the first time.
You spent a lot of time being the first.
Huh?
I said you spent a lot of time being the first, developing the first, OSS, television.
Yeah, we had I was a unit manager on a group that was. We get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and send the signal to New Jersey, the RCA studios in New Jersey for color, and the the color camera had to be at least this wide and maybe halfway down the table. It was a big mother, but we were sending these signals, and by 6 o'clock in the morning, our day was over, and NBC played the Star Spangled Banner, and they went on the air, and we were down in Hurley's bar having a couple of drinks after a big night's work. And then the business just continued. That was it.
It's been an exciting life.
Okay.
All right.
It's been an exciting life.
What was your favorite job?
Been fun.
What was your favorite job? Beth just said, what was your favorite
My
job of
favorite
all the
job?
things
What
you've
was your
done?
favorite job out of everything?
I think the the first 10 years in television was my favorite job.
Yeah.
What were some of the shows you were on? You were involved with?
Oh, I always say, how old are you? But when some shows like Kukla, Fran, and Ollie that came from Chicago would come to New York, I was assigned. That was my baby. And Fred Cove, Philco Playhouse,
Wow.
oh, let me see. Then we had other shows. I can't even think of the name of them now. A couple of them. They took the Broken Fist story.
Mr. Peepers?
Mr. Peepers?
Mr. Peepers, that's right, with Wally Cox.
Oh, wow.
And
Armstrong.
Jesus, just a host of favorites and all these actors. New York was still the source of actors. Hollywood was panicked by New York, by television. They didn't know what to do about it. That's why you got the big screen, the little screen, the no screen, that whatever you got. And they were very worried. But the New York actors were equally worried about television. That with television, if you appear on television, which was a third-class form of entertainment, would they hire you for the stage? Would they hire you for the movies? And a friend of mine, on one of the Kukla, Fran, and Ollie shows, they, in those days, the commercials very often was in the same studio as the program. And so as the program, as the story ended, the director of the show would slide out and the other guy'd slide in and the camera would be doing the commercial. So on the commercial on this Kukla, Fran, and Ollie show, something happened and they needed a pair of hands. So I phoned my friend, a starving actor with a wife and 2 kids. I said, come, I got a job for you. What are you going to do? Oh, no, Bob, I just don't. He wouldn't even stick his hands for fear he might not get a job on television, on the movies. Anyway, he was an extreme.
Somebody will notice my knuckle.
Yeah. But I think that was the most fun because things were developing and we were our own person.
Well,
it
you were
was a combination
trailblazing.
of the theater and early movies. And then pretty soon, today it's really movies, film, whether it's on tape or whatever it is. And this is not a put down, it's just the way it had to evolve.
Right.
But they were live, and it was just very exciting. It had the kind of exciting. You did it, you couldn't change it. But then in the 60s, I mean, the business changed.
How did it change? How did it change?
Well, it changed. Editing came in. In the early days, the advertising agencies owned the time.
Right.
And in the late 60s, NBC started it. President Pat Weaver said, from now on, we own the time, and we're going to sell the space. It's like a magazine. You buy the magazine, you want to be in it, then you can buy an ad. So if they were the magazine, they did the programming, and it had to be to the approval, or it had to be good, or the other groups wouldn't buy it. So they did program to meet certain, but the agencies were not God anymore in terms of it. And they became that's how it changed in that sense. And of course, then color came in, and then the ability to edit made all the difference in the world. Before you did it, you did it. That was it. Then the tape first came on. It was 3-inch tape wide. Down it got down. I guess it's 1/2 inch or whatever it is today. It's not even tape. It's just a little thin.
It's nothing.
Like
It's digital. It's all digital.
Nothing.
It's all digital. It's a
You're
chip.
Right. That's right.
It's on a drive.
A glitch someplace.
Yeah, it's a glitch.
And it's just the whole business.
So did editing allow you to tell better stories then? Did editing give you more control, or?
Well, control. Well, it gave you a huge advantage, in that if you made a terrible mistake, you could fix it. Also, you could do things that you weren't able to do before. I mean, we used to roll 16 millimeter into the live show, but you had to roll it in. You couldn't edit it in later. And you'd come to the point when we were on the show Armstrong Circle Theater that I produced for a number of years. If you needed, you go out and get stock footage, or maybe you could shoot some of it, but if you needed a story about Air Corps, you'd have the airplanes you could get from the Air Corps and stuff. But they had to be rolled in, and you'd get to the point, and you had to count down from 10 in those days for the machine to get up speed. And so it was all anticipation, and you and I are live having a good time, and pretty soon you're going to say something, and we're going to cut to film. But we started counting 10 seconds earlier, and rolled the film.
You had to count
so
it
it was
right.
It was nervous making. At any rate, it was. You asked the question. I think they're more fun. I found I could get a little bored later.
Became much more by rote.
Yeah, it became a thing, and the same stuff. The basic excitement.
But you did Dark Shadows. So as far as I'm concerned,
Barnabas College.
that's right.
Yes,
You
right.
did Angelique and Barnabas,
Yes,
so.
that's right. Yeah, the excitement would be.
Oh, that was trailblazing, that show. That show was so revolutionary.
Yeah.
That was what got me started.
That broke all molds
Yeah.
of
Yeah, I did.
totally. It was so incredibly crazy popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was
That was it.
yeah.
That was exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, how many shows have one guy bite another in the throat?
You mean back then or now?
Yeah. That's true. Back then.
Yeah.
That's true. Nowadays it's every week.
And that went along. That was it.
Yeah.
And you take jobs and over the years, and you're sort of like an actor. Unless you get a soap, you do.
Right.
You get a running thing, and or you do bits and you do pickups. I've done PBS shows and one shots or movies for television, and
Did the Adams Chronicles.
Adams Chronicles, and then I after one of the soaps collapsed at NBC that I was producing, I was at Liberty, and I got a job offered to go to NYU and teach in the film of the whatchamacallit School of Arts.
Tisch.
Tisch School of the Arts. So I was there for a number of years, got a full professor, and decided at 70 I was going to retire, and I did. And I thought, 70, I have a couple of years. And I used to say, Jesus God, just let me, I just want to see the year 2000. That's a couple of years away. I just want to see 2000. Well, it's now 2013.
What's your next benchmark?
I cut off more than I can chew. I'm still hanging around.
What year did you teach at Tisch? When did you teach at Tisch? What years?
I don't know what years. I do it by age. It had to be.
22 years ago.
Yeah.
22 years.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
I was there from 78 to 82.
Oh, yeah. Where?
At film school, Tisch Film School.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
At the Tisch School?
Yeah, well, it wasn't Tisch then. I don't think it was Tisch then.
Yeah. So that's where all this skill comes from.
No, she I just
No.
And here I've been sneering at that little camera.
you
Those-
kidding? These things are amazing.
Unbelievable.
It is amazing.
Unbelievable.
All right, well, how about-
Okay. Thank you.